our 17th Masterclass for 2020. I'm Kerry Brox, and today's Masterclass is about the future trends in the workplace, digital learning and development. As you all know, and you're sure, well, nothing's really sure anymore in the world because it's rapidly changing so fast, and we're still trying to figure out what the future is going to look like. So I think particularly for L&D professionals, it's really important that we get ready to respond to the new environments. We keep abreast of any of the new technologies or methodologies, and we keep building our capabilities so that we can quickly respond to the changing need. So all of our masterclasses are designed to help you in these areas. So I'm going to hand over to Bill Gerard, our COO, who's going to introduce our guest speaker for today. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Kerry, and thanks everyone for being here. And thank you, Rod, for spending some time with us today. It's actually really interesting because I noted when I was talking to Rod yesterday that he was in fact our very first speaker here in Melbourne back in February, and we were looking ahead at the 2020 focus, and we had about 30 or 40 people live at PEXA, and it was a great session. And here we are, the last masterclass, and who would have predicted this year, between February this year and November, December this year. And so one of the things I'm delighted to be able to do is to have Rod talk to us a little bit about where we're going into the future, and potentially, if you want to, Rod, reflect a little bit on if things have changed as a result of 2020 and in what way they might do that. So I'm going to turn it over to Rod now, and I suggest that people put yourself into speaker view, side-by-side speaker view on Zoom, because then you'll be able to adjust your slides so that you get a nice solid image of Rod, so you can see what his facial expressions are as well as the slides at the same time, rather than all the little tiny gallery views. So you'll find that you can actually do that if you have speaker view side by side. So over to you, Rod.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, very pleased to be here, especially if it's the last one for the year. So thank you for the invitation. And I suppose those that I haven't met before, I've just got some of my credentials up on the screen, just in terms of, you know, I guess some of my, over the last couple of years, credentials in this space of learning and development, but largely looking after the learning technology, and where, you know, working with medium to large, mostly medium large organizations, corporate, government, and university, and some TAFE institutions of where they're going. So I'll be drawing upon the experiences I've had directly with working with those over the last couple of years, but specifically I'll talk about what's happening on the trajectory of digital learning, but then also how that's been sped up, and then the impact that we've had and the positive turn of that from COVID and the influences that we're facing right now through to the, you know, the COVID norm. A quick snapshot of my background is instructional design, managing projects, scoping projects, learning consulting, digital learning consulting. So I'm not a tech person, although I've worked around a lot of ed techs for a long time. So I know a lot of the lingo, but I'm not a developer. So my experiences will be coming from that learning design consulting space, and just sort of strategic advice that we provide organizations. So if I start off, I'm going to, for today's presentation, I was going to target around 40 minutes, maybe 45 minutes thereabouts, and just stop a couple of times to give people an opportunity to ask questions. If not, we can hold those and have a bit of, you know, 10, 20 minutes at the end. We can sort of hang out at the end and have a bit of a conversation if there's time. So what I was going to talk about is the learning and learning technology, or let's call it digital learning. Some may call it e-learning, but that how COVID has pushed that forward and how it's forced our hand to a degree, but also the mess that that's created as well. So I want to talk through that. I want to talk through the role of learning and development and learning technology, and how the roles are going to be changing, with that sort of flipping around, with only about 5% of it being sort of more formal, structured training in terms of teaching, lecturing, developing, facilitating. And then I wanted to talk about the focus that mostly from COVID has pushed us to push forward quicker with the online and the need for self-paced, as opposed to you know, a little bit less reliance on other modes of digital, such as virtual, although virtual is still quite popular. But again, that's coming back to some of the mess we may need to clean up. And then I'm going to be talking about what underpins it all also, is like the big data concept and the emergence of career learning portfolios, what it is and why I'm calling that out as being something for us all to watch, understand, touch it, feel it, embrace it, and facilitate some of those early conversations around implementing that. And then talking through user-generated content and the speed of market. So naturally with COVID, things are dating pretty quick and needing to move pretty fast. So that's what I'll be covering off today. So very sort of quick backstory, I guess. So in terms of my teaching experience, so going back, say 25 years ago, the tool of choice then was a piece of chalk and duster and blackboard. Then we progressed to whiteboards and started to use whiteboards, and we had to make sure that, you know, all those people that use the permanent markers on the whiteboard and trying to rub that out. So that was a tool of choice. Then the smartboards got introduced, and that was pretty much the same as the whiteboards because everyone was a bit scared of this new technology of how to plug it in. So that's sort of the tools that we've seen. And then after teaching for a while, I joined the army, and we had to I was looking after training for people deployed overseas. So then naturally we had to get into the distant learning. So we sent materials over to, you know, some peacetime, but also, you know, in the early 2000s, sort of wartime conflict zones. And it's just too slow. The materials would get sent back, you know, months later. Most of the time we didn't even see it again. We'd package it up, print it all out, and send it off, and it never returned and never found the person that needed to find it. So then we started to move to the digital learning and learning technology and sending things. So we got faster from a technology point of view in terms of delivering things, but the content was out of date. So that was another problem we had. So when I say the content was out of date, we were training people in, desert and urban warfighting sort of tactics on materials from 30, 40 years ago from, you know, jungle Vietnam sort of guerrilla warfare. So the content was completely out of date. So even though we solved the delivery problem, the content problem was, say, 30 plus years from the subject matter experts thinking of what's modern and what's happening and what's current, and we needed to train people, versus to what people needed in the reality on the ground was completely different. So over that period, I guess, we saw the mode of delivery changing. We saw the emergence of technology and how that can be used, but the content and the way that we presented the information hadn't really changed. It's just the mode of delivery. And I guess so what I wanted to sort of recap is on where we're at now, typically, of how a lot of organizations we see operating where, and I've referred to it as, a bit of cheek and tongue there, sort of old school thinking and practices, is that learning and information knowledge is that transfer where I'm an expert or subject matter expert. I'm going to immortalize that into a document, a handbook, a book, an e-learning piece, or whatever it might be, or even a recorded Zoom session. And we pass that on. Someone's seen it, then they know it. And then someone else sees it, they know it. So I refer to that as like a relay knowledge, a relay race of knowledge or of sorts of just passing it down. So we're doing a lot of that. We see learning as like having a start and finish. So it's like a formal event, which we can get stuck in. And then we have experts, mentors, and facilitators that create the doctrine, the content, and then we provide it out to the people on the ground. So the example I gave before was, 30 years out of date. I guess we're looking, even if we bring that back to 1 year out of date, and with the instance of COVID right now, anything related to, I guess if I use, say, something for Department of Health, for example, around COVID training, it's out of date in a week or 2 weeks. So it's I used an extreme example of 30 years, but now in the face of, how we're designing, developing and training, how people are working, the workforces, we need to be nimble. And the word pivot, business is operating differently now. So, what was working, end of 2019, or even what we were doing back in February isn't what we're doing now in terms of business operations practice, and certainly the way L&D are doing things as well. We tend to find that we need to sort of preach to people of here's the information and we're going to tell you what to learn, where to learn and how to learn. So it's very staged. Down at the bottom, I've just put a caption there. So it's learning design, development, delivery, trainers, facilitators, experts. And I guess I'm relating that to it's the concept there of publishing a book. So, we write the book, later down the track, months or years later down the track, we publish the book, we package the book, we distribute the book, send it out there. And by the time it lands where it needs to land, it's arguably out of date or redundant, or even if 10, 20% of that's ineffective. So where we're at with, I'm just going to move this. So where we're at in terms of COVID and what it has done for us, it's propelled us forward digitally, but and the reliance on face-to-face training is becoming less at the moment. So there's a need for more to be self-paced. And I guess it depends on which countries we're looking at the moment, that the risk of having the information and knowledge sitting with a presenter or a facilitator to present, and then they come down sick, or the workforce has changed, or something's happened, then the training needs to be cancelled or delayed or compromised in some way. So self-paced is becoming more popular. We've got the push of traditional training is far too slow. And again, that book metaphor in terms of, writing the book, publishing the book, distributing the book, that's all happening, and time is occurring before the person even receives the book. So we need to look and do things differently. And COVID has made us do that, but just in a way that's not ideal in many cases. We've got the need for workplace practices to be more aligned with what we're doing from a learning point of view. So again, I gave an example that was extreme of 30 years out of date. But I mean, even if I go to a current one right now, in terms of, some COVID related training, especially like, again, some of the work we've done with the Department of Health, if we use that book metaphor in terms of designing, developing, publishing and distributing, as soon as it hits the ground, it's out of date. And we're talking not even weeks now, we're talking, days. So we need to make sure, and again, as businesses pivot, our business operations, practices, procedures, working from home, returning to work, whatever it might be, is different. And we need to align what's happening there. Mixed modes of resources and platforms. At the moment, we're seeing a lot of jumping between platforms. So we log into a Zoom, we then go to another Google Hangout, then we log into the LMS, we go to the intranet, we go to get work instructions here, and it's a bit all over the place. And we've got some issues around that that we need to look at rectifying. Oops, sorry, I've missed that last one. I hit the button too early. Previous. The issue we've also got is people delivering training thinking that, okay, let's do this differently and adjust, and let's do a Zoom session, which isn't terribly innovative, but at least it's a way of delivering some information to groups. But recording the session and serving that session up isn't ideal. So we need to look at how we're doing that, because at the moment we're seeing a lot of people recording Zoom sessions and then loading them up on platforms, or even wrapping them in the industry term called SCORM packages to run off an intranet or a learning records store or a learning management system. But it's not an effective way. It's just if you don't attend that session, then you can recap on that session, but you can't go and find that in a really easy, intuitive way to find the bits of information that you need for me in the moment that I need, unless I'm buffering through a big video scroll. So people need to look, I guess, to solve that problem, for example, is just some simple chunking and category and bookmarking, a bit like how we use hashtags to be able to, curate and filter and find that information that we need. So yeah, that's a bit of the legacy issue that we've got at the moment with uploading resources. I guess I can stop there for a second. If there's any questions before I jump onto the career learning portfolios, anything at the moment? All right, well, I'll continue through and I'll pause again shortly. So I guess the context of underpinning a lot of what I've talked about and what we're going to be seeing hitting the market very soon is what I'm calling career learning portfolios. So, and that's where a lot of the things we've just talked about, and where the future of digital learning is going, needs to support this as well. So I guess to put it in context of what it is and how it works, I'll give a personal example of, years ago, I studied 4 years to become a teacher. I then did my professional practice and spent 4 years first-hand experiences as a teacher. And then when I changed roles and joined the Army, not long after doing that, I had to then do a certificate for in workplace assessment and training. So effectively, discarding my 4-year teaching qualification, my professional practice I had to go back and largely do what I would call, say, year one, semester one of the training I did, 8 years earlier. So with and again, another similar example is, I've worked as a project manager for years in the e-learning and digital learning space and L&D. And we were audited, and some people might have heard me tell this story before. We got audited from a government agency that was also an RTO. And in producing that evidence of professional practice or professional learning portfolio, I had to print things out. I had to show things. I had to carry the laptop. I had to show physical evidence of things, which was just archaic. So the problem that we've got there is, in terms of professional learning portfolios, is that the way we're recording and collecting our evidence is out of date. It's printing, showing materials, when it should just be all automated in terms of like an XAPI of sorts to interface with a record store or some data collection automation. And some of the universities are starting to do it at the moment, or playing with the micro credentials in terms of short, sharp little pieces that then collate to something. I guess an example of what it also is like, LinkedIn starting to touch on it a little bit in terms of LinkedIn shows my professional career and different roles and different experiences. And it has the skills at the bottom, and then you can have 50 or 550 people have endorsed me for this particular skill versus that skill. So we're getting that that evidence gathering, but then also having the work practices that I do in the documents. And again, LinkedIn has the portfolio, so you can put up a portfolio, but it's very rudimentary at the moment. So having that organic of, I've worked in an industry for 5 years, or I was onboarded and now I'm changing from a banking job here to a banking job over there, that learning portfolio and career data tracking evidence mechanisms come across with me. So then that aligns within the organization that I've just been onboarded with. So in the instances that I gave, I wouldn't have to show any evidence or do anything to get that certificate for in workplace assessment and training. In terms of the auditor, I wouldn't needed to. The auditor could easily just go through my career learning portfolio or digital footprint, so to speak, to be able to easily track and filter through the evidence that would be provided there, with my evidence, practical on the job evidence, but then also evidence from other people, adding in and commentary and endorsing and the like. So the solution, or a holistic sort of neat solution like that, doesn't exist at the moment, but it is with those workplace credentials and big data. It is going to start hitting the market, and we need to be prepared of how we're building, chunking, tracking, reporting all this digital footprint, so we can have that career learning portfolio follow us through as we change roles. So here we've got three focus points that we have to look at right now. In terms of the cleanup, I guess we need to look at what was thrown online in the face of COVID. Generally what's thrown up online anyway, but in the face of COVID, more got thrown up online in terms of information dissemination, where it's a recorded Zoom session of someone talking. It's a document, it's a policy, it's a PowerPoint or whatever it is. So they're not actually learning artifacts that have gone online. It's just a lot of information regurgitation, information dissemination, which is not learning. So we need to start to distinguish the difference there. And also we need to start to distinguish the difference between performance support and learning, or even the three: information dissemination, policy, procedures, learning activities, campaigns and events, and the performance support, because they're all completely three different offerings. And in terms of performance support, it'd be maybe something where I don't need to know it until tomorrow, and then I'll worry about it tomorrow, and I don't need to retain it. Or an example would be, learning long multiplication and formulas, for example, is I wouldn't, in terms of a workplace context, don't need to know it, because wherever I go, like even right now, I've got my phone sitting there. If I need to do any calculations, I'm going to jump on and do that. It's a bit like I hear the kids all the time talking about like performance support in terms of getting the information as I need it, when I need it, and how I need it. So they were trying to measure how long ago the chickens hatched. We had little chickens, and so they'll open it up, push a button on Siri and say, how long ago was 3 weeks ago, or they'll say whatever it is, and Siri automatically comes back with a response of the date and the time, whatever it was, of what they're looking for within 2 seconds, 3 seconds. I'd already mentioned that the other part of the cleanup is fixing up the recorded Zoom sessions and the information that we've dumped online. So, you know, how we're going to go about turning that information dissemination and regurgitating what was done in a session to make it into a learning experience, or extract the learning from that, or even slice it up into multiple chunks so I can watch the sequence if I want, but I only want to know what they say in this particular part or this chapter. So I'm going to filter and go straight to that because that's relevant to me right now, as opposed to a half hour, 1 hour recording. Excuse me. Streamlining platforms. So we need to consolidate platforms. So if we look at, say, online schooling or virtual schools, sort of the concept behind that, or those parents that had homeschooling during COVID, it's like you needed a password manager for your password manager, because there's so many different logins, so many different passwords, so many different platforms, and very, very few of them interfaced with each other or integrated with each other, with very few single sign-on. So there was just platforms galore. And it's very confusing which platform we're going to use for what, depending on what subject and how we're going to do it, and sending people here for that type of learning and over here for that type of learning. So we really need to consolidate the platforms and blend them together in some way. So from an organizational point of view, consolidate the platforms to make sure we've got the platforms that we want. But we're in an era now with technologies and tools and templates where it's not that hard to then modify some platforms. So I'm not talking about going to your, enterprise level platform to make them do changes, because that's going to become very costly, and unless they get a lot of repeated requests, they're not going to do that. But instead, maybe creating a landing page of sorts that aggregates the platforms with like an interface with a single sign-on that then is an interface to those various platforms, that then just makes the learning one centralized place, one centralized platforms that seamlessly integrates with other platforms. So we need to start doing that. Now, if the vendors aren't going to do that with our enterprise platforms, let's start doing it ourselves and getting that API and consolidating them into a custom-made dashboard. Now, a couple of years ago, I'd say that's quite resource intensive, a lot of effort, a lot of tech know-how, but with the technologies that we've got now, it is realistic and practical to do that, when I wouldn't probably said, maybe a couple of years ago that it just wouldn't be viable because it'd be so much effort. But yeah, not so much now. So we need to look at sort of streamlining some of those. We need to be clear about the offering as well. So if it is a recorded Zoom session, it is a minimal viable product. If it is a short little micro learning piece or credential piece, or a bite or whatever it's called, or even like a selfie video, a subject matter expert records a selfie, uploads it, and it's from a learning piece or a performance type piece, or the social learning even, that we need to start sort of come up with some way of someone identifying quickly and easily, and before you even enter that piece of learning, knowing what to expect. Because what the feedback is at the moment is that it's just fragmented, and some are really jarring. You've got minimal viable products up positioned against some that are very high profile products, and you've got the ones where the selfie videos versus something that was a $10,000 video shoot sitting alongside it. So it looks fragmented, and it needs to some sort of, maybe even it's a naming convention or an icon type thing that sits on the platform that people know straight away what that type of learning resource is going to be, or how long it's going to be. So being really clear up front around what the offering is. And it also comes back to the difference between if it is just information and information dissemination, little bite-sized pieces, or is it a learning piece, or is it going to be something you need in the moment on the job as a performance support. The last one there, we've got the big data strategy. So we need to start capturing the data, and I'm talking about more than just stats on SharePoint, and we're talking more than just completions, incompletions, and non-attempts with maybe a score in an LMS. So we're talking big data tracking. I guess in a digital learning instance, you'll often hear it as like an XAPI tracking back to an LRS, which is a learning record store. Again, for those that aren't, I think most people now hopefully are familiar with what that is. But just in case anyone's not, the best way I would describe it would be similar to Google Analytics. So hopefully people are familiar with how you can track Google Analytics in terms of where people come from, where they went, what they did, what they clicked on, how long they sat on the page for, all that type of data. Google Analytics just tracks that data and you'll get statistics. But a learning record store or something like that will store it is a hybrid between like an intranet or an LMS where it has the user profile. So not just statistics, although you can get that, but the data would be that Rod did this, when he did this, how long he did this for, he's experienced these type of activities or resources or emails or tasks. So capturing that big data, but what we're finding is that people don't know how to measure that data. They don't know how to link that data to be able to measure the performance. They don't know how to measure the effectiveness of the learning or the learning resource or the performance that's happening. So I'd suggest get in there, get your hands dirty, look at the big data, track the big data, identify what it means and how to measure it, because you'll be making mistakes in the first instance, like everything that's new or you're not familiar with, like measuring how long someone lands on a page for, if that page is going to scroll vertically on a mobile phone, is going to be different to what you're clicking on to read something or clicking on of a traditional e-learning piece. So even how it's built from an e-learning piece, whether it's a vertical scroll from mobile or a click next type piece, is going to give you different metrics. So understanding that and how you're going to accommodate that, how you're going to measure things, is something that we need to be doing now. And we need to be doing meaningful, because just getting data for the sake of data, there seems little value in that. That then leads into facilitating the career learning portfolio. So that's something that we need to be doing, and without the data, that can't work and that can't operate. Or otherwise, all it is just a digital CV that you create yourself, or you just put in resources, a collection of resources together. But yeah, getting the live data tracking feeds and things like that. Of the learning that you're providing, that you've been provided and experiences, but then also the learning you provide back to an organization. That's also of value in terms of, your career learning portfolio that you need to start collating. And we need to start having those conversations around the career learning portfolios now within our organizations and within the L&D sector, just so we're not on the back foot. We need to, if we're not prepared and we're not used to tracking the data and how it would work and how this could get put together, then we're just going to be, slowing down the train when there's no need to. It's moving ahead. I guess I might stop there and see if there's any questions again at that point before I get into the next phase.
Con, did you want to join us? And I noticed you made a couple of comments there in the chat box. Did you like to buy into any of this at this stage?
Well, thanks, Bill. Can you hear me? Let me start the video too. Here we go. Can you hear me? Hello, Rod. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, buddy. Good, good. Yeah, I was just saying, look, very interesting. I think that career, the career approach you're taking, I think is very, very important, given that the dual resume is one thing that we all have around our necks. Experience, knowledge, those sort of broader capabilities and those attributes that one has must be acknowledged and supported in any sort of document or even any presentation going forward. So I think what you're doing is really good.
Thank you. One of the things I found, Rod, as well, is I noticed you're focusing a lot more on collaboration and curation. And that's something that certainly ILP and the work that I've been doing, in particular in my own area, is starting to focus. It's not just about me developing a program that I deliver. It's really about providing a learning solution for participants in that way. And what I'm finding is that the curation of material is something that's really important. I know when I was doing my putting my online program, or my university program, my master's university program online, it was really about links to here, articles to there, and and it was bringing a total solution to the students as best I can. And what we're finding now in ILP is how do we actually collaborate across our members? How do we hook them up and let them learn about each other in such a way that they can collaborate to bring a total solution to their clients and things like that. So I'm liking what you're doing there.
Yep. Yeah.
And that part, curation is a very I have this view with curation. You've got to be aware of the biases of the curator. So you need to be very careful when you're curating, being very transparent about what you're curating, the methodology you've adopted, and the process you've gone through.
Yeah, spot on. Because again, there's lots of stuff out there that is just not useful. I know with my students, when I point them to some things, I said, for heaven's sakes, don't just go online and Google this and think that what you're looking at is real material. You need to know where it comes from, where the research has been done, whatever it happens to be, and that it's a reliable process, and acknowledge it, of course. So that's all part of that. Yeah.
Yep. And it's a critical fundamental change in learning design and development versus learning curation as well. It's a totally different skill set. And being able to curate things, I guess, is similar to hashtags in social media, or like if it's not chunked up, if it's not easy to find, and if you don't have those tags, or like if it's a 1 hour of a recording that gets loaded online, you can't find the bits that you want in that recording. So if there's some way you can sort of track that, report that, tag that, so you can start curating. That's the fundamental there. And the longer we wait to be able to start doing tagging resources and assets, then the harder it is for us to try and do it when we really want to implement it.
I did have one question, and I suppose more a comment, and I'd like to hear your view. A number of years ago, when we moved into the e-learning space, and you would know this very well, because of the click next and the navigation, e-learning got a bad name, and e-learning became a sort of a dirty word in organisations, and then it was associated with compliance learning, and therefore trying to get people to come along to an e-learning and want to take some e-learning was a bit of a challenge. What I'm finding now is Zoom, and the Zooming is going to also provide us with a very similar challenge, in that everyone's so zoomed out, and because there have been so many Zooms out there and a lot of crap ones, and so I'm being a bit blunt, but there's been a lot of crap Zooming happening. Is Zoom going to be also the rock around our neck that we're going to have to get rid of eventually, because so many people experience bad Zooming that it's something we're going to continually fight against in trying to make people think Zooming has got a place and can play a role?
Yeah, I suppose the difference between because you can get some Zooms that are like in the virtual learning, it's just like a video. You might as well go do a big long 1 hour selfie and serve it up, and that's what it is. So versus those that are more engaging, adding something simple in like some polls, I guess is one thing, but breaking it up and having sessions and breakouts and trying to simulate a positive real world learning experience as opposed to just recording something. And again, I just kept coming back to that, the tagging of the big data tracking, so you can filter it. It's a bit like the internet. When the internet was first launched, it was so much stuff got loaded up so quick that there was such competition in search engine space of being able to provide meaningful search results. And then the big ones like Google and the like started to fine tune their algorithms and searches and dominate. And those that just weren't searching and providing the type of results that we wanted just started to fade out. So it's the same from a learning point of view. We need to be able to find those resources, because they're like, as Bill said before, for the master's training of collating all the materials that centralize it in some way, but then having learners do that as well. So they've got the information. They might have a tip or a trap, even if they record a short little piece and put it somewhere. We just need to make sure that we don't have a situation where there's just a lot of data, a lot of information, and a lot of it's just information dissemination and recordings, and people have to go try and filter it and find it.
I think that's really important. In fact, it's interesting. Carrie and I are going to be having a chat in the next day or so, and I think she may have already had an initial chat with an organization that allows a whole raft of things with video, but one of the things they have is video search, so that basically you kind of find any word that's actually captured there can be searched and found. And with so much video material around now, it's no longer the words that are in text, it's the word that's in speech that are going to be very important, and so we're investigating that aspect as well.
Yep. And then let's track and report on that, because you'll be able to review that. I watched that, but I only zoomed in for that part, which was 1 minute and 50 seconds through to 2 minutes and 40 seconds. And that triggers something off from a compliance point of view, or a record, or a career learning portfolio that gets added into a virtual file of some sort.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, very interesting.
Rod, I really like the idea of that career learning portfolio. I think that's a huge plus. So I was talking to a university the other day and they're looking at mapping capabilities, because I know working in different corporate environments, if you go to a new organisation and even though you've done a leadership development program in your previous employer, they still expect you to do this one. So he's mapping all the different capabilities so that people can sort of be recognised for any prior learning that they've done within organisations. So it fits in really nicely with that learning portfolio as well. So I love people are now sort of starting to think about how we can work smarter and not reinvent the wheel continuously.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if we look at like that example I said before, we had the audit and they were an RTO and we've got a diploma in project management because they audited the files. Now you wouldn't need to. All I'd have to do is me open up a window to say, yes, from a privacy point of view, I allow that institution or university to track my data for the next 6 months. And they can look at the data, look at the TED Talks, maybe prescribe some things for me to do, or can see, you know, searching through words and phrases like, you know, how do I manage scope with a client or something like that. They can search for that, filter through, assuming I give permission. My emails are the ones I tag for them to look at or put in folders for them to look at. And then they can search for the word scope and then they can see there's 6, 7 emails where I've communicated scope and scope variation, and then they can evaluate that. So then my thinking is that the universities and the higher education accreditation system is going to be more of a subscription model, whereas like I subscribe and I give you permission to track my data and details, and then you contact me in a year's time, you're about to say, okay, we've been monitoring, Rod, and we've been seeing what you've been doing, and we're prepared to give you a diploma in project management. You just got this little gap here you've got to fill. Here's some ideas how you could fill that, and then we'll accredit you in that degree, qualification, diploma.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of important because a lot of it, that's sort of like with RTO when you're doing qualifications, your Cert 4 and diploma and whatever. But within organisations, because they do some really great learning and development, that also needs to be recognised as part of their development portfolio.
Yeah, yep. And hence where we need to start having this conversation early now of how to break it up, chunk the data, the hashtags, the big, you know, the delivery in terms of and the curation of being able to record all that back into a central repository that we'll call a career learning portfolio.
Absolutely, right.
Where that sits, because you know that's a bit of a beast to be able to do that, because you know we all have our footprint from a, well, I shouldn't say all, like I'm on an Apple phone, for example. So, you know, like I'm on, what is Apple, like iTunes or iCloud or whatever it is. So then if I can back up my phone from an old phone version, or all the data and my photos will sync here and sync here and sync there. So getting all that to then sync in a central repository, because if I upgrade my phone, it all comes with me. So with that big data concept and the tracking, if I change from working from this particular organization to this particular organization, all that data comes with me, and now someone can go through and moderate what I'm exempt for and what I'm not exempt for.
Great.
All right. Well, I'll keep going through. We're sort of touching on some of this now in terms of, you know, underpinning what we're talking about is what I call the 3 C's. So the creation, curation, and collaboration. And I was going to talk through each one of those. And some people may have heard me talk about these, but I think they're so fundamental for everything that we've been talking about, of how it's, you know, critical for us to be able to achieve that. So the creation of learning now is definitely, during COVID, has to be quick, has to be agile. We've got people now working from home. We've got, you know, because a typical organization here within Australia, you know, they might be running IE 10, IE 11 on a Windows machine, and it's a very staged environment. Maybe there's a few people that have got, you know, iPads, but now we don't know what platform they're on. They're all working from home. They're all on different devices, and some are on mobile phones. And we've got, so the curation we need to start, the creation we need to start looking at far more than just deploying to sort of the bigger screens, but then also the offering and how that looks, because it is radically different of how you treat the content and build the content in a digital learning context. And we've got the minimal viable products as well. So like the selfie videos and those quick things that need to be put together. We've got user-generated content from an e-learning point of view with tools out there now like AppyLearn that, you know, you can create an e-learning piece very quickly and very easily. And I guess, some of this would be, for example, for the creation that sort of maps in with like the working from home, mobile responsive, minimal viable product and user generated content is some of the work we were doing for different areas, but like with the Department of Health, where they needed something, Wednesday afternoon, Thursday, need to be done ready for 9 o'clock Monday because we've got people doing roadside testing or roadside roadblocks, or we've got whatever it is, and it really needs to be done. It's going to be implemented Monday at 9 a.m. or midnight on the Sunday, whatever it is. People are going to be standing there. They need to do the training, and we've got like 48, 72 hours to create something. Ordinarily, before COVID, to create something like that, it'd be probably between, depends on the project, of course, like typically would see, project development design life cycles in the digital learning space of going anywhere from 6 weeks to maybe even 12 weeks. And yet here we now are in a situation, real situations, the real happening, that we've got, 48 hours or 72 hours to create a professional, large scale rollout implementation by Monday morning. So that's where, and it needs to be working on mobile phone because people are going to be standing on the side of the road doing testing, or under tents or wherever it is, doing testing or blocks or whatever it might be on mobile phones, and we need to track and report that activity. So that's where, a massive change in the last, this year, I guess, compared to, what would have been done in the past. And user-generated, content is critical for that as well. The authentic is something that we're seeing where the subject matter experts, may need to be in a position to be able to create the material themselves and deploy it themselves. So again, I mentioned at the very start of the presentation around some content that was 30 years out of date versus, then that book metaphor in terms of write the book, publish the book, distribute the book, and that's at that point when someone gets to learn from that. Things are moving too fast, business are moving too fast, and the closer it is to the content on the ground that's happening, the more authentic it is, the more it resonates with people, and the more accurate it is. And that speed of deployment and development is a fraction of the effort of what it would have been back in 2019, for example. The curation, we mentioned a bit time, so I've got in there some key tags that hopefully we're all really familiar with, like the just in time, just enough, and just for me. So the information I want in that video or that Zoom recording or that e-learning package or whatever, that information you've got, this bit here is only relevant to me. So I only want that bit. I've done that role in the past, so I don't want that. I want this bit. And I've worked in that in the past. And if I touch on a career learning portfolio, I did that last year in my last job. So now I just need this, and here's the evidence for that. But also, I've already, I've done that type of training here. Or again, coming back to that example where I'd done a teaching degree, and then I had to go back and revert to do a Cert 4 and workplace assessment. So that was taking me back to, year one of a degree doing semester one type training. So yeah, what's relevant to me, exemption tests, the recognition of current competencies with that digital automation and some AI features in there, perhaps, that means that you can accredit that. I was doing some basic calculations for like a medium organization, doing some rough estimates in terms of what it costs to have that employee and the overheads that relate to that employee. I was crunching some numbers that were fluctuating for, like it was, I'm trying to remember now, it was like if it was 10,000 people in an organization, it was working out to be something like saving them 1 hour of training in terms of filtering through, this is what you need and you don't need this because you've exempt yourself. It was like $1.2 million saving just for that one piece. And then I was looking at organizations like the larger organizations that got like 100, 130,000 employees. And that was getting into like the $7, $8 million potential savings for, just saving an hour or two of someone's training time, being able to curate to what they need now, not what they need down the track, because they may never need that. Or they've already exempt themselves from this, so let's give them that. So we're talking for, medium, large organizations, we're talking savings of millions just by making little functionality decisions of how people get served up content. Now that's from an organizational point of view, but I mean, from a learning point of view, what do I need to go learn that? It's got nothing to do with me. I just need to learn this part of that. So again, I guess looking at it from a learner's perspective, it's more relevant, authentic, meaningful. And it's what I need, when I need it, how I need it. as a, from an organizational point of view, it's medium large ones, as I said, it's millions of dollars worth of spend that you'd otherwise save. The collaboration is critical. So we've got a lot of organizations that we work with that are, have their self-paced learning, and then they've got their social learning platforms. And again, it comes back to that disjointed platforms, because we've got two different places to go for learning for two different purposes. And some of the e-learning pieces that are on a learning management system then get deconstructed and loaded in as isolated resource or assets into a social learning platform. So then we just got a whole level of confusion around that, and the way how we track and report on that in different platforms. So we need to be smart and centralized around our platforms. The learning that you might have a piece of content that serves up, or I might say something now and we break for some conversation in the past, and then we can drill into that and find out, well, I don't agree with that, I agree with this, I've experienced this and I've experienced that. And in that collaboration, or even let's refer to as a water cooler conversation sometimes in an organization, or now with COVID, it's a virtual water cooler conversation. But that's where the true learning is, the gold of what's happening. And you get that, you capture that disjoint between what the organization and the subject matter experts and business owners think that the end users are doing and what they need and what they want, versus the reality of what they're doing and what they want. And we're in an environment with COVID right now with so much change in operating models. It's just emphasized the fact that we need to be collaborating and getting those little golden nuggets out of the collaboration to use those. But again, back to the XAPI or the tracking big data, we need to be tracking that. One, from a filtering collaboration point of view of curating it in terms of, someone shared a piece of content and that's a variable piece of content. I'm going to give it 5 out of 5 stars. That was pretty irrelevant and I don't agree with it. I'm going to give it 1 out of 5 stars, because then you can start filtering through popularity. Oh, it's a bit like without naming names, like the content aggregators on platforms, thousands and thousands of pieces of training material, and probably depends on which platforms you can have. There's like hundreds of equal employment opportunity type courses, for example. So which one has the information I need? Which one's the good one? Which parts of that do I need to do? So being able to sort of, identify those resources and the conversations that come around having that, and the conversations I contribute back to the organization as well. So if someone makes a comment, I contribute back to my thinking. The community can score the value I'm providing back to the learning community or the learning environment or the project team by saying, yep, that's a great comment, or that's a great share. I was looking for this as my problem and I've been the one to solve it, as opposed to, again, coming back from an organizational design and development implementation, someone's got the information on the ground, here it is right now, as opposed to writing that book, publishing that resource and distributing it out, and it's out of date by the time it hits the ground. I might break again there just in case there's some questions, if someone wants to sort of talk through anything or anything there, any experiences they've got they can share that.
I think, Rod, I think, we mentioned it before, the issue of collaboration, I think is so important. And are you seeing any changes in the way people are collaborating these days? And in particular, I'm thinking about, you mentioned about universities and things like that, and we're seeing so much stuff coming out of MOOCs and new ways of looking at things. Are you seeing any different ways of collaborating these days to deliver learning solutions?
Not really, not anything meaningful that I can share, or any stories. I'm seeing a lot of things, rather than sort of being sort of in a coordinated approach, that it's very quick and easy just to set up a Zoom session and people collaborate and get in and get out again, and then that information's lost unless they record it, and then we fall into the trap of just serving up a recording. So yeah, capturing the information, almost like those little golden nuggets around the water cooler conversations, immortalizing them digitally.
Yeah.
Which maybe it relates back to just the tracking bit, to be able to then add value in terms of the rating and communication, but then also the tagging of those so we can find them again. Because it's like if you could sit and hover above a floor of a building, and all the water cooler conversations going on with the little pieces of learning gold out there that we're trying to find, having some sort of filtering system to be able to find them quick and easy would be fantastic. Short of walking around trying to listen to everyone's conversation or listening to everyone's pre-recorded Zoom session.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I know one of the things we've been, and particularly I've been harping on a lot this year is that we talk about at ILP, and in the industry, L&D professionals. And one of the views we have, and certainly I have, is that learning and development professionals are just that, professionals. But if you think about people who are involved in learning and development, they go way beyond the people we are describing as instructional designers, facilitators, assessors, coaches. Any manager, any supervisor, anybody at all can be in the learning and development space, providing on the spot training. And it's really interesting because how do you capture that? How do you understand that? And one of the things ILP is starting to do now is launch the idea of a learning organization, which has been talked about for a long time without any real frameworks for it. And it's this idea that says we need to understand learning in a whole new way, that it's not about how many courses you attend or certificates you have. Yes, those are fine, but there's more than that, and there's all that learning that's taking place on almost a continuous basis that we're not able to acknowledge and understand. And I think one of the things that universities are doing, in particular, because I spent 20 years in that space as an adjunct professor, but it's one of those things that you sit back and say, do they get that? And do big organizations get that? And how can L&D professionals help expand the idea? I did a LinkedIn search a while ago looking at if you just Google or search for people that are trainers, assessors, L&D professionals, in Australia or just around the world very quickly, you come up with tens of millions of people that have something like that in their profile. And it just goes to show you just how big this industry is and how important it is.
Yeah, yeah. Even the interpretation of what an instructional designer is so different based on who you're talking about. And I guess what you're touching on now, I think, comes back to that user-generated content and the power of that as well. And COVID's forced a lot of that user-generated content forward. As people are uncomfortable with user-generated content because let Lorraine's go a little bit. And I suppose it comes back to that term, democratizing learning. Which is uncomfortable. Our role has been to design and develop and filter and create and facilitate, and we have subject matter experts when people are, as you said, learning all over the place. We just need to capture it. I'm going to skip this slide for a second, come back to it. I'm going to just go to this one because it's relevant in terms of, I was sort of ruling out the learning design and developers and learning designers, because the thinking and what we're talking about here and what you were saying, Bill, is our role is changing and the skills that we need are changing. So here, when we're going to see less need for people to be learning designers, developers, facilitators, trainers, mentors, and they're going to be doing things more like learning curators. I think Con mentioned that before. We've got learning analysts. What is a learning analyst and how do you do it and what does it mean? Learning moderators in terms of that curation and collaboration and moderating the water cooler conversations in a digital context and that whole sort of curation, creation and collaboration. These three type of titles is what we're going to see once we start democratizing learning and letting people operate in that way. So it's a completely different skill set mindset that we're going to have from an L&D point of view. I guess any comments on that while I'm on that slide?
Well, I think that's exactly right. We spoke about it before. I think curation is going to be key. And I know myself, I was curating material for many, many years without actually understanding that that's what I was doing. I think the whole idea of curation is something that is not really understood in any depth. And it's about this, bringing the learning solution to the fore. And not just trying to be a trainer, but in fact, trying to be a learning solution provider. And curation, I think, is the only way to do that in today's world because there's just so much stuff out there. fortunately, I think there's better systems for doing that now than there was even a few years ago. But I think the more people get into that idea, I think the better it is. And learning analysts, if I understand what you're saying with that, is it's analysis of understanding what it is that needs to be learned. Is that part of that?
Yeah, and like, I guess if I link that back to the big data tracking is, what are people doing? What are the trends? What are the patterns? What we thought was a problem, is it really a problem? Are they learning? Is the problem becoming solved? And so that data also is not just tracking how many times someone rewound the video, because what does that actually mean? Does it mean anything?
Yeah, exactly. I think big data is very much a part of that, and that's an area that we probably need to focus on a bit more. That gives me the idea that I'll make sure that in 2021 masterclasses, I'll bring that into the fore, and maybe you and I can have a discussion about where we look for that, because using big data to develop an understanding of learning and development and learning transfer, I think, is going to be really important going forward.
Yeah, it's a skill, or anyone that like upskilling in these type of curation, analyst, moderating type roles. It's a skill in high demand, and there's not a lot of people that have firsthand experience. A lot of people might talk about it, but having firsthand experience in measuring that, and it sort of flips it around, as opposed to a facilitator at the front of a room, as opposed to facilitator is not heard or seen. They're in the background curating, analyzing, and moderating.
Yeah, absolutely.
From the front seat to the back seat.
Absolutely.
But that's not discounting the value they add. The value is absolutely critical. It's just a different role.
I agree. Does anybody else have a comment on any of this at this stage? Feel free to unmute yourself and join us.
I think, Bill, I'm just having a look at that because we've got our capability framework that we need to sort of start building some of these new type of roles into that as soon as we can. So there's a fair bit of overlap, and we've covered most of it, but we haven't actually assigned those new titles. So
yeah. And Rod, are you familiar with the ILP capability framework at this stage? Have we shown that to you?
No, I think I knew you were putting it together. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, okay, because we've got a showcase actually coming up at the end of November for 3 days. And what it is basically is the L&D capability framework based on a couple of years of research that's been developing and rapidly changing even this year. But it's pretty solid. So we've got 6 dimensions that have been looked at that is a well-rounded learning and development professional. So it doesn't matter which way you're coming at it from. And within that, there's 3 capabilities within each dimension, and then you have an assessment going up from beginner to expert kind of process. So 18 capabilities that have been identified, and what we've done is we put a 3-day conference together that we're calling a capability showcase, that's going to showcase what it is that moving forward for learning and development people. And then we've engaged 20 of our expert member mentors to mentor people through each of those capabilities, to show them what the capability is about, why it's important, and how people can move up the scale depending upon wherever they're at, and even maintain it. So it's a significant event that's coming forward, and it's sort of our tilt at trying to meet the challenges of the future in a research-based way, which is pretty important. So we may get a chance to share a little bit of that just before we finish up this session, but why don't you continue on if you've got a little bit more to show us?
Yeah, I've got a fly hovering around me.
You asked for conversation, so you got it, right?
Yeah, I know, that's good. Yeah, well, not with a fly buzzing around, but yeah, hopefully it'll find something else to attract itself to. Yeah, okay. So with what you were saying there, Bill, that was important, and that we need to do anyway. And with COVID pushing some of the things that we talked about, it's just absolutely fundamentally critical right now. So that would be really valuable to members looking through that and upskilling, I would have thought. So I guess on this slide, I just wanted to recap on some of the things we talked about in terms of being responsive and thinking responsive. So responsive, yep, in terms of running, how we're going to run it on different devices, and we've got roadside testing, and people are going to be there at 9 o'clock, and they need to be able to access a piece of content, but you also need to track and report it in the big data as well. Immediate in terms of being able to access the information when I need it. Again, that book metaphor, write the book, publish the book, deliver the book, and it's only at that point in time someone gets to access it. It's too long and too slow, especially if you're talking around organizations pivoting, and as the example I said with, roadside testing that need to be, produced in, 48, 72 hours. The flexibility of being able to do that. So I'm on the side of the road, I'm waiting for the testing to open up to do my role, doing COVID testing. That's when I'm going to do the training. So that flexibility and adaptive as well, because I'm the person that's going to be pulling people over and directing them in where to go for testing. I'm not going to be the one actually testing. So I only need to do this bit. I don't need to do that bit and that bit. So adaptive with how we offer that. And if I change roles and I go over there and I help do some testing, then okay, then maybe I'll go in on my phone now, even as I'm walking over, and do a little micro learning piece to upskill on that. Leveraging industry experience comes back to, like, making sure the information, getting those water cooler conversations, tracking, reporting, chunking, and that user generated content. So the people doing the job in the moment that know what's happening on the ground, because it's different to what the organization thinks is happening, and that user generated content, we've got that. We're recording those water cooler conversations, and we're filtering and tracking those as well, so we can serve them up and curate them easy. So we're getting closer to the coalface in terms of that, the learning in the workflow. We're in the actual flow of work, as opposed to way back here trying to write and design it. So I guess in examples, I touched on that one in terms of the mobile learning. I just explained it then in terms of needing something now to deliver for people to stand on the side of the road. The curation tools and searching and filtering, they may be in platforms that people already have. Otherwise, it's not that hard to create some of those searching tools where you can just, if you've tagged your assets, all you need to do is just some sort of functionality to be able to say, if you're looking for these type of words or phrases, grab these hashtags or these learning resources. So someone is where we need to start now. We need to start tagging those resources so we can, use them in curation tools and the ones in the social learning platforms and forums. So we've talked about that, so I might skip through, but the bots as well. If someone hasn't played with a bot, get in there and play with it now. The technology's there. It's not viable, in my opinion, to create a chatbot. So you license a chatbot with all the functionality there. It's all there. All you have to do is put the content in. So, and that's where the effort comes into, because if you haven't been tagging things and creating that, then you've got to step backwards and go create all that and then wire it into the chatbot. And it's just, to make it sound, how simple it can be, you license a chatbot. If you have a list of 100 or 1,000 FAQs of, what the question is and what the outcome might be, as a typical FAQ that we'd see, stick that in a spreadsheet and load it into the chatbot. And next minute you've got some functionality like Siri on your phone. You could say, this is what I want, or this is what I'm searching for. It'll bring it up to say, is this what you're looking for? And again, those secondary tags, that if you're looking for this resource, you're probably interested in these ones as well. So you don't want to just all of a sudden say, okay, let's create that and make that happen. You want to build those FAQs to make sure the value of the information you're looking for and searching is good content. And yeah, so we can start putting that information together. This comes back to the slide I jumped to before, so I'll skip that. So this is on the last slide, so I'm going to wrap up in the next couple of minutes, but I've shared something very similar to this in the past. So this one here is just some things that we should be doing now and in the very near future, in terms of creating that culture of chunking information like we talked about, breaking up the Zoom sessions, or you'd mentioned, Bill, before, in terms of the recording of which bits that you get to filter through, and if you need to, sort of tracking those things. As opposed to like a 1 hour Zoom session recording or a 20-page document or a 30-screen e-learning piece. We need to start thinking about how we're going to curate and chunk that information. The linking and tagging of assets is critical, and the competencies and the like, because without that, you don't have anything. You've just got a resource. It'd be like when things just got dumped on the internet without any decent filtering system. How could you Google and find something? So that's where we're going to start chunking and tagging those assets. So, the Google equivalent that we have in a learning environment within our organization is powerful. It brings back search results that we need, as opposed to just serving up things that aren't or less relevant. What we also need to be doing now, ideally in the next few months or early in the year when we've got some time, we need to be starting to working on the projects teams starting to own the learning events and the content and user-generated content, using tools to quickly create e-learns, how we record the sessions, how we get how do we record those water cooler conversations, how do we know where they are and how to find them and record them and then track them. We need to get the curation filtering systems going. So like our learning search engines are going to be more powerful, because as user-generated content, when we let go a bit and have that democratized learning, we don't want a flood of content. And it's like the content aggregators out there where there's just thousands and thousands of materials. We need to be able to know which one's valuable and which one's not. So we need a way of curating and filtering what I need and the value of that to me based on my role. We need to be looking at voice commands as well. That example I said before, like the kids using Siri to find out answers. I gave the example before of health needing to create the COVID testing related materials. I'm on the side of the road. I'm waiting for the station to open up or whatever to be implemented, and then we're all going to regroup and start doing testing. I might even be driving to that roadside as long as I've got hands free. You could use voice activation to then serve up that training and then track and report that I've done that. So when I step out of the car to walk over to the testing booth, I'm qualified, I'm trained, and it's been evidence of that. Then we also need to start to expect that autonomous learning and the culture of that autonomous learning, of creating content, democratizing learning, sharing learning. Someone's shared some content, I need to contribute and add value back if I can. And then other people need to be rating the value I'm providing, not just the value that's been provided to me. Then we also need to start looking at, like I mentioned, the chatbots. If you haven't set one up just to experience it, of how it works and the information you need to be able to feed into one. Because the functionality now is just easy. It's license something. You could create a chatbot, but that'd be a little bit of work. But to license something would be, it's pretty straightforward. So some of those AI sort of collaborative technologies to start experimenting and implementing and applying, understanding them, not just how, the concept of them, to actually get your hands dirty, have a look at it. Same with tracking big data, get your hands dirty, get a free, LRS loaded up. Don't even worry about branding it, or even putting the user profiles on it. Just track data, see the data coming in, to then be able to determine how you interpret the metrics there and how you're going to measure performance and learning. Otherwise, it's just a concept and you haven't done it, and you're going to start measuring how long someone sat on a learning piece of content inaccurately because it was a learning scroll on a mobile phone compared to a click next, and it's completely different data. And I'd already mentioned the voice activation and performance support type events and tools. So I guess to wrap up and see whether there's any questions and to carry on with whatever else you need to cover off. Any questions at the moment?
I don't know about questions. Kim or Ellie, do you have any questions? If you do, just let us know and come online and we'll take them. But one of the things, Rod, that, this has been a terrific session in my mind, because it sort of wraps up so much of what we've been talking about this year. You're talking about AI and chatbots. We had Emma Weber talking about that just recently. We've talked a little bit about the curation side of things, relationship stuff. There's been so many things that I think going forward, I think it's going to be an exciting 2021 and beyond for learning and development, as so much changes and so much technology comes on board. I was with a friend the other day who has, Google, just Google, can you do this? Google, can you do that? And we're changing the way we communicate, the way we learn. I know, even 6, 7, 10 years ago, when I would walk around, I'd always have a number of TED Talks on my phone. So if I was waiting to go on stage to give a presentation, I might take that time to listen to a TED talk and things like that. So no time was ever wasted in your learning and development process. And today we're hyper that. You know, we're going way beyond it. So it's been really very interesting. Rod, thanks for that. Like I said, I think it was just an outstanding session. Carrie, I wonder, would you like to just share a little bit about what we're doing with the capability framework and the showcase? Because I mentioned that before, and Rod, you might be interested to know a little bit about that and what we're doing with it, because it fits with a lot of the things you're talking about and sets a baseline, I think, for some of the things. So Carrie, would you like to take over for just a little bit?
Yeah, let me just get it up. Sorry.
And by the way, I asked Ellie before, how you doing there, Dad? And she said, awesome.
Yeah, well done. Very insightful, very interesting.
Good stuff.
All right, let me just call that up. We're just doing some minor changes as well, so I'll just get to share my screen.
Just a short overview of what we're doing, because I think it fits a lot with what Rod is saying, and
Yeah,
I'm interested.
and I'll probably love to catch up a little bit more, Rod, and just talk about some of these new roles as well. So can you see that now?
Yep.
All right, so following about 2 years of research, interviewing our members and doing some focus groups, and then also talking to corporates, we've come up with about 220 behaviours that L&D professionals need now and in the future. And after listening to this talk, we need to sort of also upgrade it a little bit. But it basically, we broke it into the 6 dimensions. So the 6 dimensions are professional attributes, strategy and planning, design, develop, deliver and execute, business smarts, and evaluate and feedback. So we've sort of clustered them in those areas. We've actually now, through a university partnership, created an assessment so people can now assess, determine where they're at. And we actually did it with about 140 people in a government department who all thought that they were up to date with all of their skills, and the average was about 40% of the capabilities that they needed is what they had. So what we've done, rather than, some of the feedback we got back is that people love conferences and it's great listening to the experts, but they really want practical hands-on sessions. So we've actually approached 18 of our highly skilled fellows and members to take each one of the capabilities and run a half-an-hour session on how people can develop that capability, some tips and tricks and lots of takeaways, very practical sessions over a 3-day period. So it's actually happening on the 24th to the 26th of November. If people book for the 3 days, they'll get all of those 18 sessions. And we're also organising some networking sessions throughout those 3 days as well. So we're excited because it's really practical, it's hands-on information just to help them build up those skills. So, and as you said, they might be able to create that and put it in their little learning portfolio for future to see what they've covered off. So Phil, is there anything else I need to add, or is that enough of a snapshot?
No, I think that's good, Carrie. I think one of the things about it is that what we've also done is use these capabilities to then re-look at how we certify learning professionals. So in the past, we've had a certified learning professional program. Now we have certified learning facilitators, designers, consultants, solutions, and even certified learning organizations. And certified virtual facilitators. So the idea behind it is that now certifies and benchmarks against these capabilities, and it's peer reviewed and looked at this kind of thing. So what it's trying to do is give people that feeling of they can demonstrate a skill level that is potentially going to differentiate them in a changing world where basically we're in a global market now, whether we like it or not. We're not just going to be running a training session here in Geelong. We're going to be doing things anywhere in the world, and so could anybody else. Somebody in Des Moines could be doing something here in Geelong. So we're in a changing world. So It's all very exciting, and today's been met all of my expectations. And one of the things I learned years and years ago when setting up networking sessions like this and others is always have a topic that you're interested in, because that's part of the process. And this has been a fantastic session for me, that's for sure. So Rod, any last words from you or from anyone else before I turn it over to Carrie to finish us up?
No, thank you.
All right, good stuff. Okay, Carrie, maybe you go ahead and finish this up, and then Rod and Carrie, maybe we might just stay on after this for just a minute or so.
All right. Rod, thank you so much. Very interesting. I love, you know, like there is so much information out there that you sort of like when you've condensed it all, and I'm sort of going, oh gosh, we could be doing more of this and more of that. So to be able to source, filter, track, curate all of the learning that's available out there is a massive job. But I think it's just showing us the new era of learning and the changing of learning and development roles to sort of handle the new age. So really impressed with what you're doing. So thank you so much for sharing that information with us this afternoon, and we look forward to catching up again soon. Yeah, so thank you everybody for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you the next fortnight or at our weekly member lounge on a Friday at 10 a.m. Australian daylight saving time. I still get confused. So thanks very much. Thanks. See you next time.
Thank you.